We're almost there. Just a little longer.
I'm heavy, aren't I?
Very, very heavy. But that's not a problem. I can do anything if I put my mind to it.
Just throw me in a ditch.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's one problem solved.
As you know, I am not from this land. The issue is, I don't know any more about where I came from than you. I remember the Silk Road, stretching out before me as far as the eye can see. Clouds of dust wisping across the bare dirt trail. That endless expanse of red earth remains branded into the very fabric of my mind. But beyond that, most of my memories are gone. Yeah, very swell guy. I can only clearly remember that the last 5 years or so of my life. In my oldest real memory, I was a slave. I didn't work on some nobleman's estate, but instead I did physical labor, construction work. I built roads and buildings, tore down hills and mountains. That's where it was decided someone built like I am would be the most used, I suppose. And while I doubt I need to tell you this, living conditions were miserable. Other slaves withered away and died on a daily basis. Working a noble's estate would have been easier, without a doubt, if only for the fact I would have a specific master. I don't remember anything about my life before becoming a slave. All I have are those few images from which I can guess I was a part of a caravan, or perhaps a messenger. I vaguely remember being waylaid. We were vastly outnumbered, massacred with little resistance. Or at least, I assume that's what happened. When I next woke up, I had been stripped bare and was surrounded by men I didn't recognize. The words they spoke were gibberish to my ears, but I could tell from their tone of voice and expressions that the things they were saying were not friendly. They seemed to be mocking me, laughing at me. As you might expect, I attempted to protest, but evidently I had been beaten quite badly while I was unconscious. My joints were stiff and swollen, on top of my dehydration, so I could barely move, let alone put up a fight. As strong as I might have been at full health, I was in no condition to do anything then. You have no idea what that's like. How it feels to be abused and humiliated, desperate for food and water. Oh, I see. So, as I was saying, I was a slave for one grueling and torturous year. No one treated me like a human being. There was no one from the same part of the world as me, and there was no one to come to my aid. Over time, I came to learn their language, though I could only speak it. I don't know how to read or write. But to be honest, I think I was happier not understanding what people were saying about me. They had many words to describe me, none of them flattering. Some of them would even call me beast. And the longer I was treated as something less than human, the more I began to question whether I really was one. A darkness grew inside me with each repeated insult. I wanted to make them pay for the daily abuse. And who wouldn't? The desire to exact vengeance when you've been mistreated is only natural. It's perfectly reasonable. But they were right about what I was deep down, a beast, and my revenge went far beyond what could be considered reasonable. "4 years ago, I was sitting in a carriage as it rattled along a dirt road. This was not the kind of carriage you rode around town in, but a filthy slave transport. It was packed front to back with slaves, or soon-to-be slaves, I suppose I should say. There were men, young women, and even children. Everyone wore a look of hopelessness on their faces, and no one had the strength left to resist. They looked like me a year earlier, deprived of food and water and beaten into submission. The slave traders' guards were armed, of course, swords hanging from their hips, ready to cut down anyone who showed any sign of resistance. So they sat there, lamenting their fate. Sitting beside me was a young girl, crying in silence. Glancing over at her, I caught a glimpse of her face. Large chunks of skin seemed to have fallen off it. It was, suffice to say, an unusual sight. But beyond that, I didn't think much of it. I didn't find it disturbing or unpleasant. Perhaps because I had a similarly unusual appearance. What caught my attention, though, was the way she was crying. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it seemed different somehow from everyone else crying in the carriage. It was almost like her tears were not for herself. "Why are you crying?" At my question, the girl turned her head up to look at me. Surprise crossed her face for a few brief seconds, but that was her only reaction to my appearance. I assume her thought process was roughly the same as mine, so she felt no need to fear me. After a moment's hesitation, she said,
I'm sad because I didn't get the chance to show my gratitude to people very dear to me.
Her response perplexed me to no end. Why was she concerned about showing gratitude? Why was she not despairing of her own circumstances? Why was that the emotion that gripped her in that moment, not hatred for the slave trader or sorrow for herself? To this day, I still don't understand. But that wasn't the only thing I found curious. Her voice, despite being soft, cut through the crying and wailing of the other slaves. I pictured it like a single patch of clear water in the middle of a swamp, untainted by its surroundings, gently undulating. One sentence was all she said, but there was something unbelievably calming about the sound of it. For a moment, I was filled with a sense of tranquility. And though you may not believe it, I wanted to get her out of that filthy carriage, to undo the shackles threatening to taint her. And so I took action, driven by that desire. That is no lie, I promise.
No! No, don't kill me! Please, you can have all my money! You can go free if that's what you want! I'll apologize. Anything! What? Why are you laughing? Please spare me! I have a wife and children! Please! I'm begging you!
And why should I care?
Oh, that scream.
Holding a sword in my hand felt amazingly right. Whatever work I once did must have required me to use a blade. Even with the shackles still around my wrists, I had little trouble slaughtering the slave traders and their guards. They let their guard down because we were restrained. The thought of anyone resisting never once crossed their minds. Dead bodies sprawled out around me. Corpses I made, lives I had snuffed out. Look at this. See, no one can defeat me. They stood no chance against my strength. More. I need more. I need more. I don't have the words to describe the high it gave me killing those men, the power I felt over them. I was driven mad by the stench of blood filling the air. No, it just drew out what was already there. If I weren't already deranged, the corpses would have had nothing to stimulate in the first place. After taking the keys off one of the slave traders, I returned to the carriage, doing my best to act calm and suppress the bubbling exhilaration. Hey, you, unlock my shackles for me. I would do it myself if I could. You! Say something, would you? But she said nothing, simply removing my shackles as commanded. If she had said even one word, let me hear that curiously calming voice of hers, then in all likelihood, I probably would have stopped there. But she remained perfectly silent. Everyone was in shock at what they had just witnessed, her included. In time, though, the slaves started cheering. The same people who had been wailing minutes earlier were now shouting praises.
Our savior! You are our savior!
We're free to go home!
Free to... I figured since you're doing Yukimasa, like, a lot of talking, I would just do, like, the extra voices.
Alright.
We're free to go home! We can have our lives back! Undo our shackles, please!
I'm a beast.
What?
I'm not a savior. I'm not a man. I'm a beast. Isn't that right? I'm a beast, aren't I?
What are you?
More. I need more. I thirst for more.
What? Why are you pointing your...
I need more! In that moment, the last of my reason dissolved. I went into a frenzy, slaughtering the helpless slaves I had never intended to kill. I was euphoric. I couldn't get enough. I reveled in it. Never before had I felt such utter ecstasy. Their cries for mercy as I ripped through them were delicious. The look of fear in their eyes, the way their faces twisted, the splatters of blood around their mouths open in screams, the despair that filled them. I didn't care anymore that they were just as much victims as me, that they had suffered the same abuse and humiliation. All of that was buried beneath the waves of bliss that ravished me. Everyone who asked to be spared, I skewered. I worked my way around the inside of the carriage, killing dozens upon dozens of slaves. Heads went rolling off shoulders, hot geysers of blood spewing from open necks. I was practically wading through blood by that point. Some bodies I completely dismembered. Others I disemboweled, leaving their entrails to hang out of their open guts. All of them had looks of agony frozen onto their faces as death took them. I don't know if I was unconsciously avoiding her or if it was just coincidence. But the girl was the only one left alive. She, of course, hadn't been spared the mess, so she sat there drenched in sticky, red gore. Her lips appeared to be trembling, though I couldn't tell for sure with so much of her skin missing. The fire inside me still burned white hot. She was the reason I had done any of this in the first place. I had stood up because I wanted to set her free. But my original intentions were long since gone from my mind. Raw pleasure overwhelmed any sense of reason. I approached the girl, pointing the sword at her neck. I expected her to scream, to beg for her life like the others. But she did nothing, simply stared up at me. Why didn't you run? At my question, the girl finally spoke.
Why did you kill them?
The sound of her voice quelled the furor within me. It baffled me. I had no control over it, yet this strange girl could pacify me with a single utterance. The words she used didn't matter. It was her voice. She could have called me a monster, and it would have had the same effect. Because I felt like it. I couldn't explain my reason for murdering the slaves. I didn't have the words to express the things that drove me. All I could tell her was that I did it because I felt like it.
And why haven't you killed me yet?
I couldn't find a sure answer for that question in my somewhat rattled mind either. In retrospect, I realize now that her voice was my first tether. But at the time I had no idea why I didn't take her life in my frenzy. I had killed other children, other women. Young, old, sad, miserable. It didn't matter. Nothing had so much as prickled my conscience. I don't know, I said, and then I stepped off the carriage and walked away, left with questions I couldn't answer. Was I really a beast? Was unleashing my innate savagery and reveling in the massacre of helpless people really all I wanted? I didn't know. After escaping from the slave traders, I became somewhat of a bandit. I had no hope of anyone taking me in. Not only was I a murderer, I was a foreigner. Nor did I have any chance of finding decent work. So I lived by the sword, killing and plundering. The money, I honestly didn't give a damn about. I had no desire to be wealthy. It was simply a matter of survival. That, and quenching my thirst. I went on for about 3 years like that. Until finally, encountering something I couldn't defeat with my sword. No amount of muscle was enough to protect myself from disease. One day I woke up with the chills, my vision blurry, barely able to move my own limbs. I set off for a nearby village, hoping to see a doctor, but my body didn't last that long. I collapsed on the side of the road, drained of my last strength. It was a moderately busy road at that, so I assumed I had made it close to the city. Dozens of people passed by, silently pretending not to see anything. I didn't look like someone a respectable person would want to involve themselves with in normal circumstances, so it was no surprise they wouldn't be interested in this sick, filthy foreign man. Hell, I couldn't remember the last time I had bathed. It was hard to look at me, let alone get anywhere near me. This is where I'm going to die, I thought. It seemed like a suitable end to a mad, murderous monster's life, withering away on the side of a road beneath sneering passerby. The fact that I was still alive at all after 3 years of leeching off other people's lives was itself wrong. I didn't lament my impending demise. I accepted that such was the way of the world. But then I glanced up to see a woman in a nun's habit looking down on me.
Are you alright? Are you sick? I'm going to check your temperature, okay? Wow, you're burning up. You shouldn't be out here in this condition. Do you not have anywhere to go? Don't worry, I've got you covered. There's a church not too far from here. Hang in there just a little longer and you'll be fine.
And what is your God going to do for me?
He helps people in need. It's not very big, but we've always got room for people who need it. You can rest up in one of the open beds, and I should be able to get you a little... I promise it'll be better than staying out here at any rate. Can you stand? Not a problem. We can do this together. Put your arm around my shoulders. The church isn't that far. We can do it.
You are going to carry me?
Yup. It'll be fine. We'll make it one way or another. Almost. We're almost there. Just a little longer.
I'm heavy, aren't I?
Very, very heavy. But that's not a problem. I can do anything if I put my mind to it.
Just throw me in a ditch. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's one problem solved. Now, God doesn't like his children talking like that. Almost there. We're almost there. So, how are you feeling? Better, I hope.
That does look like a comfy bed.
Well, I was about to say that. Better than what Michelle got. I've left some applesauce on the bedstand if you're feeling up to eating anything. And you're welcome to stay here as long as you need to.
Why did you help me?
Because that's what people do. They help each other.
That's not what most people do.
I like to think it is.
You church people are exceptions.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
This woman is only showing me compassion because she doesn't know what I am. She wouldn't be so friendly if she knew I was a madman and a murderer.
If there's anything else you want, let me know. I can't make you any fancy dinners, but if it's anything I can get, I will.
Could you tell me your name?
I'm Marie.
Marie. After, who was it? The Virgin.
You're not familiar with the Virgin Mary?
Just look at me. I'm clearly not from these parts.
Ah, yeah, I can see that. So that would make you a traveler, huh? You speak the language really well, though. I take it you've been here a while then?
Yes, I have.
How exciting! So when you're better, maybe you could tell me about the country you came. I've never been far from home, so I'm curious what it's like elsewhere.
There's nothing I could tell you.
It can be anything. Tell me about yourself if you want.
I'm even less inclined to do that.
Get better soon, okay? I'm looking forward to hearing all about it.
I'm not sure there's anyone out there more deserving of the Virgin Mary's name.
What was that?
Your name, it suits you.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm incredibly flattered to hear you say that, but I hardly live up to the name. What's your name, by the way?
Ukulele.
Okay, ukulele.
I have no name.
You don't?
If you want something to call me by, you can choose a name for me. Anything you want. I am nameless. You give me a name.
I think you should be the one to choose your name. I'd be more than happy to help, though. But you should go with the name you think is best.
I see.
Well, I should get going. I'll be around, so if you need anything, just holler. Bye then.
How am I supposed to choose a name for myself when I don't know anything about me? I recovered quickly with a proper bed and roof over my head. Out on the road, I had been certain I stood no chance, but I was back on my feet after only 3 days at the church. My body was more resilient than I ever knew. And now that I was back in health, I had no intention of sticking around. Thank you for everything. I would be dead if it weren't for you.
No thanks necessary. I'm just glad to see you're feeling better. There's no need to be in such a rush to leave, you know. Stay a bit longer, make sure everything's alright.
I'm not going to stay any longer than necessary.
And if you're sure...
Take this as payment for food and lodgings.
I can't accept that, no. We don't charge for charity.
Charity is not free. You paid for it. Let me pay you back.
I can't.
Please, take the money.
If you insist, I can accept it as a tithe.
A tithe.
Think of it like a donation to the church. Like you said, the work we do isn't free.
All right, then, a tithe it is.
Thank you. And may God bless you for your generosity.
So long.
Hey, if you're ever in the area, maybe you could stop by sometime. I never did get the chance to have that talk with you. And I was really looking forward.
I'll just cause you more trouble.
What? No, you wouldn't. What makes you think that? Are you afraid you'll scare people off because you look different? I really don't think you need to be worried about that.
It's not just my appearance. Do you mean it? That it won't be any trouble having me around?
I absolutely mean it.
Okay. I'll consider it.
Wonderful. I can't wait to see you again.
Yeah. Believe me, I knew I had no place involving myself with her. A killer making himself comfortable in the house of God. I don't even believe in their deity, and I still knew that was nothing if not extremely disrespectful. The money I had donated to her church wasn't even clean. It was stolen. I didn't feel the slightest bit guilty about it, though. I was more than conscious of what I was doing, but none of that mattered to me. She had smiled when she took it. That was enough. Seeing the nun's smile put my heart at ease, much like the sound of the slave girl's voice had several years before. It had restrained me, suppressed my urges. That smiling face was my new tether. I had always believed that I was at my happiest while torturing people, that my thirst for murder was ingrained in my soul. But as exhilarating as taking others' lives was, there was a part of me that yearned for peace. I had gotten a taste of that with her, and I wanted more. Even knowing I had no place in that world, that peace was something I would never attain. Still, I longed for it. It started with brief visits every few months. In time, though, their frequency began to increase. Soon it was once a month, then twice, then once a week. The length of my visits gradually grew as well. Every time I showed up, the nun greeted me with a smile, quenching my thirst without the need for blood. The more we met, the more I endeavored to be a normal man around her, or to play the part of one. I thought that if I acted like there was nothing wrong with me, then I wouldn't be out of place at her side. I wanted to feel like I belonged in that peaceful world where she lived.
And then I'll go to the brothel. We gotta get rid of the claustrophobia. That damage reduction is such a pain in the ass. Who got syphilis?
I think it was Kanetsu. Or she got
Yeah.
something.
Because that's really bad. That's a really bad one to get, so that's gonna actually have to get treated. It's just a rash. Why do you need a knife? Jesus.